In Argentina, the police repressed demonstrators in Córdoba that were peacefully protesting against the neoliberal decree imposed by President Javier Milei. The World Health Organization said that Northern Gaza is now without any functional hospitals due to a lack of fuel, staff, and supplies amid the ongoing Israeli onslaught. And India's opposition alliance held a protest for a second day Friday against the suspension of more than 140 lawmakers from parliament by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government for obstructing proceedings. Hello, welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. In Argentina, the police repressed a peaceful protest in Córdoba against a neoliberal decree imposed by President Javier Milei. During Thursday night, police officers repressed with pepper gas and rubber bullets hundreds of demonstrators who were protesting in the center of the capital of Córdoba. Local media reported that at least 12 people were arrested and several injured. The protest expressed its rejection to the decree announced by the ultra-right Milei, which proposes a deep deregulation of the economy, lays the foundations from the privatization of public companies, and repeals laws and regulations that protect essential rights of Argentines. At the same time, for the second consecutive night in Buenos Aires, a crowd of people demonstrated in front of the Congress of the Nation. Shouting they should all go away, the demonstrators demanded the legislative power to reject the package of measures that threaten the working class. The cacerolazos, this type of demonstrations, were replicated in hundreds of cities of the country, such as Rosario, Santa Fe, Mar del Plata, Mendoza, Junín, and Esquel. In Ecuador, the National Assembly did not approve the criminal prosecution of former Vice President Jorge Glass for alleged overpricing in the contracting of public works for the reconstruction of Manabí. With 48 negative votes, the plenary of the Assembly does not give away the prosecution of Glass. The organic law of legislative function of Ecuador states that at least 92 votes are required for this type of case. The case for which the former vice president was to be tried was related to the construction of a road in Manabí, after the earthquake that affected that province in 2016. In Cuba, the second ordinary period of sessions of the National Assembly of People's Power in its 10th legislature concludes on Friday. On this day, 3 bills are scheduled to be presented, among them the public health bill. For more than 400 Cuban deputies will also discuss the draft law on the military prosecutor's office and the draft law on the system of attention to complaints and petitions of the people. They will also review the updating of the legislative schedule for the coming year. This Friday is also scheduled the approval of the agency and the provincial government that will render account in July 2024 before the National Assembly, and that of the agency under high supervision. The debates take place in a difficult economic context worsened by the economic blockade maintained by the U.S. on the Caribbean nation. In the United Kingdom, the economy is on the brink of recession after new data shows that gross domestic product contracted in the third quarter of this year. Data released Friday by the National Bureau of Statistics indicate that the country's economy fell by 0.1% during the third quarter. In terms of output, there was a 0.2% fall in the services sector, offsetting a 0.4% rise in the construction sector and a 0.1% increase in the manufacturing sector. The United Kingdom will therefore be in technical recession if gross domestic product falls in October-December period, as such a scenario is equivalent to 2 consecutive quarters of contraction. The government of Spain vetoed the participation of the European Union in the mission promoted by the United States to send surveillance ships to the Red Sea. The measure was taken during the meeting of the Working Group of Foreign Affairs Advisors, where the government blocked the formalization of intensifying the exchange of information and increasing the presence of additional ships in the Red Sea. The mission vetoed by the government was supported by the 27 member states of the European Union, and it was expected to be approved unanimously during the Council. The operation, promoted by the United States, seeks to respond to Yemen's actions against the ships of countries that support Israel amid the siege against Gaza in support of the Palestinian cause. In Italy, more than 50% of women are victims of physical and psychological violence at least once in their lives. Around 12 million women between the ages of 18 and 84 suffer abuse, and only 5% report the aggressions they're victims of. Specialists detail that 50.3% of women do not report abuse to the competent authorities, 16% forgive or justify the aggressor, while 11% simply choose to forget what happened. The Institute of Clinical Psychology of the National Research Council detailed that it is important to provide knowledge to women to counteract the tendency to normalize gender violence from the cultural sphere. And Turkish security forces have rounded up 304 people suspected of having links to the Islamic State extremist groups in simultaneous raids across Turkey, the Interior Minister Ali Yerlanka said on Friday. The Interior Minister Ali Yerlanka said the suspects were detained in 32 provinces, the majority of them in Turkey's three largest cities, Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir. The operation, codenamed Hero 34, was conducted jointly by the Police Intelligence and Counter-Terrorism Squads. Yerlyaka mentioned that there was no information on the suspects' nationalities. The militant group has carried out a string of deadly attacks in Turkey, including a shooting at an Istanbul nightclub on January 1, 2017, which killed 39 people during New Year celebrations. The ministry released a video showing images of raids, including anti-terrorism police breaking down a door, handcuffing suspects, and leading them into police vehicles. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. Intense Israeli bombardment on several areas in the Gaza Strip have claimed the lives of 390 Palestinians and injured more than 700 in the past 48 hours, according to health officials. At least 6 civilians were killed on Friday in an airstrike on a house in eastern Khan Yunis, according to the Palestinian news agency Wafa. Several wounded, including a baby, were taken to Nasser Hospital. Attacks were also reported in Rafah and the Nuseirat refugee camp. In the north of the Strip, 9 people were killed, including a mother and her 5 children, in an attack at a house in the Jabalia refugee camp. According to health officials, 20,057 people have been martyred and more than 53,000 people have been wounded after 77 days of total Israeli siege on the besieged Palestinian enclave. The United Nations Organization's Global Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Partnership warned that Gaza faces critical levels of food insecurity in the region. According to the agency, 93% of the population of Gaza Strip faces critical hunger rates with insufficient food and high levels of malnutrition. It further noted that the lack of food is impacting the proliferation of disease throughout the enclave, especially among children, pregnant and lactating women, and the elderly. It is worth mentioning that due to the devastation caused by the war and the Israeli blockade against Palestine, basic supplies have been critically scarce for the Gazan population since October 7th. On Friday, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammad Shtayyeh accused Israel of carrying out massacres in the Gaza Strip and of trying to stop the population of the coastal enclave through the blockade and systematic bombardments. In an interview with Palestine TV, Shtayyeh denounced that the Israeli authorities and the army are killing for the sake of killing and acting in the spirit of revenge, committing unprecedented massacres in full view of the whole world. The head of the Palestinian government rejected proposals for a humanitarian truce, but defended an immediate halt to the aggression. The Prime Minister again criticized the U.S. veto of several draft resolutions in the UN Security Council, calling for an end to the fighting in Gaza, and stressed that Washington should review its position in maintaining its protection of Israel in the Security Council. And the Israeli occupation forces resumed their mass detention campaigns in the West Bank, arresting more than 4,655 Palestinians since the beginning of the occupation's aggression on October 7th. A joint press release issued by various prisoner groups said most of the detentions were concentrated in Hebron, with more than 1,000 Palestinian citizens detained. According to the document, more than 260 children have been arrested, in addition to around 160 women, including those from the 1948 occupied land. The press release added that 46 journalists have been detained, 32 remain in custody, whereas 20 of them were placed under administrative arrest. The Israeli occupation forces have so far refused to reveal any details about the number and fate of the detainees from Gaza. The Palestine Telecommunications Company announced tonight the gradual restoration of communication services in the central and southern Gaza Strip after it went out of service on Wednesday for the sixth time since the beginning of the Israeli aggression. Occupation forces also destroyed during its aggression the generators powering the main division from Khan Yunis in the south of the Gaza Strip, it said. Israeli warplanes once again bombed the main fiber optic internet line in the Strip, causing a complete interruption of communication and internet services, according to the Ministry of Communications and Information Technology. Technical teams are having great difficulty repairing the damage due to the extensive destruction to the infrastructure left behind by Israeli aggression. And since the beginning of the Israeli siege in the Gaza Strip, the number of dead and displaced have been increasing every day. Displaced citizens have lost their homes, clothes, and belongings. With little money, they turn to low-cost clothing markets to find some clothes to protect them from the cold and the rain. Let's see the testimony of one of these displaced in this exclusive material from our collaborator, Mohamed El Saifer.
We left our homes with only the clothes we had on. When we arrived here in Rafah, we had to look for second-hand clothes here in the stores that sell them at low prices. New clothes are expensive, and when we had to leave our homes, we left our money and all our clothes and belongings behind. Now we are here looking for big jackets to protect us from the cold and rain. The tent is not watertight, and water leaks in, especially at night.
In the United States, calls for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip are echoed by trade unions and other organizations in a movement that is spreading more and more in the North American country. On Thursday, dozens of Orthodox Jews joined the mobilization of different organizations and trade unions that took to the streets of New York to demand peace for Palestine and a definitive ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. The demonstrators carried signs calling for an end once and for all to the Israeli siege, which has claimed the lives of more than 8,000 Palestinian children. Let's remember that the United States government granted Israel about $3,800 million in annual military aid, while President Joe Biden asked Congress for an additional $14,300 million. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly, and you can share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. In China, the death toll from the 6.2 magnitude earthquake that hit the province of Gansu and Qinghai on Monday night has risen to 144. The authorities of Gansu province explained during a press conference that 784 injured people are receiving medical attention in the region's hospital. The incident also caused the collapse of more than 155,000 houses and severely affected water, electricity, telecommunications, and transport services. The Chinese government, together with the Ministry of Emergency Management, decreed a level 2 response, and 200 million yuan have been allocated for relief and recovery efforts. India's opposition alliance, India, held a protest for a second day Friday against the suspension of more than 140 lawmakers from parliament by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government for obstructing proceedings. Hundreds of followers of various political parties and the public filled up Jantar Mantar, a protest site at the heart of the capital, to listen to their representatives. The acronym INDIA stands for Indian National Development Inclusive Alliance and comprises 28 opposition parties who have accused the government of throttling democracy in the country. The lawmakers were suspended over the past week for demanding a statement from Home Minister Amit Shah about a December 13 security breach when the two intruders stormed the chamber by jumping from the visitor gallery and releasing yellow smoke canisters. The opposition blocked the proceedings for Parliament for several days by raising anti-government slogans and carrying placards into the chamber. The suspended members are now barred from entering Parliamentary chamber. And vote counting is underway in some polling stations in the Democratic Republic of the Congo after the country's election kicked off on Wednesday. Some 44 million voters in the DRC went to the polls to elect a new president, members of the National Assembly and provincial assemblies, as well as municipal councillors, with delays in deployment of voting materials and reports of sporadic violence at some polling stations. Returning officers from the DRC's Electoral Commission have started counting votes in some polling stations around the capital, Kinshasa. The Commission has faced serious challenges delivering ballot papers and electronic voting machines in many areas across the country due to poor road network. According to the official electoral calendar, provisional results are expected on December 31st, and the president-elect will be sworn in on January 20th next year. The intensification of the fighting in Sudan during the last weeks caused the displacement of more than 300,000 people. The United Nations organization started that the increase in tensions and conflict in the region caused an increase in the number of Sudanese who have fled their homes. The International Organization for Migration detailed that since the beginning of the conflict in April, around 500,000 people have been displaced inside and outside the country following the conflict between the army and the quick support forces. The UN also stated that after 8 months of armed conflict in Sudanese territory, the most vulnerable are the citizens who are facing an economic and health crisis. On Friday, authorities in Germany reported transportation disruptions due to the winter storm that hit northern Europe. The national railway company Deutsche Bahn cancelled services from Hamburg to Hanover to Frankfurt and Munich, while long-distance services from Hamburg North to Kiel and Flensburg were also suspended for safety reasons. On the other hand, the coastal areas of the North Sea are under flood warning, while also Hamburg, the river Elbe, has flooded, causing severe damage to streets, houses, shopping centers, and the electricity supply. It should be noted that in the city of Frankfurt, Germany's busiest airport, there have been some delays but no cancellations due to the storm. And in the United States, the arrival of the storm from the Pacific causes flooding in coastal localities in Southern California. Heavy rains accompanied by thunderstorms affected the provinces of Ventura, Santa Barbara, and northwest Los Angeles, being the most affected areas. The National Weather Service forecasts that rainfall will continue this Friday in several locations in the west. In this sense, the federal agency issued an alert to the residents of southern Arizona due to the possible arrival of the storm. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media: Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.